Hello, my name is Alex Cassian, and in this video I'm going to share my process of creating this portrait painting done from life. This alla prima painting took about 4 hours to complete from the beginning to the very end, and I wanted to condense it into a 9.5-minute video to walk you through my process. If you watched my previous videos, you know that I always focus at the beginning on the drawing and the composition part of the initial 25 minutes of the set. I find that splitting the poses in 25 minutes, it's much easier to manage, it's easier for the models, and also it's easier to plan out the strategy of building a painting. That being said, in the first set of 25 minutes, I focus on getting my drawing right, getting the big shapes, and just splitting the main values, so establishing my lightest light and my darkest dark. In this specific painting, I'm taking advantage of the fact that my background is really dark, and I'm throwing it in right away in order to compare it with my lightest area, which is around the forehead. And once I have the lightest light and the darks established, I'm able to judge the values and distribute them throughout the entire portrait in the first 25 minutes. When painting alla prima, efficiency is really the key, and there are certain tools that I rely on in order to be more efficient in painting. So if you've seen some of my past videos, I talk about the importance of using different brushes, where each brush is dedicated to a limited set of values. For instance, I tend to start with 4 different brushes, one for my lightest areas, second one for my midtones, third one for my darker values, and the fourth one is for my darkest darks, so for the deepest areas. And while brushes play an important role, also the choice of surface is pretty important because as you see here, I'm using a neutral gray background that helps me quickly establish my values and see the accurate color temperature from the beginning. For these quick alla prima sketches, I always use smooth Bristol paper that I cover with my ground. Working on a smooth surface helps me to better move the brush around, and so the whole experience becomes much more pleasant than, for instance, painting on a typical cotton canvas or cotton panel. As I advance in my painting, my initial goal is to establish the full range of values, which then I start to expand into different color temperatures and into different hues. If you look at the image on the left, you can also see my setup. So I'm working on a glass palette under which I have placed a layout that I designed myself. This is a layout that has different placeholders for each paint, as well as a grayscale that helps me to establish the values. Unfortunately, in this picture you can't see the grayscale as well, but the idea here is to be very efficient even in organizing my paints. So the paint placeholders help me to quickly make sure that I have all the colors that I need, and even if I need to go somewhere to a model session or to a plein air painting session, I can prepare my colors in advance, always making sure that I don't forget any pigment to put out there. And speaking of pigments, so the paint brand that I'm using is a local manufacturer. I'm based in Canada, so this is a Canadian brand called Kama Pigments. Many people have been asking me about the colors that are laid down on my palette, so I'm going to try to list them right here. So here I have titanium white, then that kind of a lighter beige mix that you see there, it's called piglet. It's basically a color that the manufacturer decides to give to the pigment. The following color is called rose gray. Then the following color is blue gray. Followed by that you see a color called violet blue. Then there's cadmium yellow, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, transparent yellow oxide, transparent red oxide, yellow ochre, cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, and the last color is transparent green oxide. Going back to the use of brushes, I try to stick to the medium-sized brushes for as long as possible, as they're much more efficient in applying the paint on the surface. However, at some point, I switched to a smaller brush to start varying more of a detailed, smaller shapes, especially around the eyes where a medium-sized brush is a bit too rough. While the use of type of brush is pretty much a personal preference, I actually like using round brushes that I can almost sculpt into any shape that I want. So for my medium and small brushes, I tend to fan out the brush in order to create a smoother connection of each scale. So rather than using kind of a pointy side of the brush, I'll just fan out the brush and I'll apply one tile by tile in order to build the layers of my paint. And one of the most common questions that I receive about the use of brushes is, how do I prevent from my new layers scraping off the previous layers? So that can be done in a few ways. First of all, you've got to find a brush that is not too rough or too soft. I mean, too soft of brushes are going to slow you down in the process. And the rougher hair brushes are unfortunately going to be scraping off the previous paint, especially when working on a smooth surface. So brushes that I like are something like synthetic medium roughness brushes that have slightly longer hair. So the length of hair allows you to load quite a bit of paint on your brush. That being said, if you pay closer attention to the way I apply my paint, I tend to tilt my brush on an angle so that rather than scraping the paint, I simply lay it down and leave it there. One of the things I never do is I don't go in there smudging my colors. I allow the blending to happen just naturally by putting one color next to another, and because my proximity of the values and the hues are so close, it allows the transitions to appear to be smoother. But that being said, none of the colors are actually sort of blended together. They just mix in naturally one next to another. Working from a live model differs quite a bit than working from a photograph. I'm not saying it's better or worse, it's just a different experience altogether. So this project actually started back in December 2024, and I'm approaching my 50th portrait, so right now we're about mid-February 2025. And one of the main differences that I noticed is understanding your timing really, really well. I'll give you an example. For instance, when you're working from a live model, rather than trying to register one specific pose, which you would when you're painting from a photo, you're painting the accumulation of the experiences throughout the time. So for instance, one of the things I noticed is that if you're working on the eyes, you definitely better off capture the expression on the eyes at the beginning of each of the 25-minute segments, because you'll notice that as you're approaching the end of just before taking the break, your models will look a little bit more tired. So working with time as a tool becomes an essential part of the experience. So I hope you enjoyed this short video. I'm going to be sharing more of these videos, so I would appreciate if you subscribe to my channel. And if you have any questions, please leave them down in the comment sections, and I'm going to try to address them in my next video. Thanks again for watching.